Query this. Ask yourself this, Rebecca. Do you think they haven't done the study, or do you think they haven't published the study?
Hello, Texans for Vaccine Choice supporters. I am Rebecca Hardy, Texans for Vaccine Choice president, and I have a very special guest today, none other than Aaron Siri. Let me read a little bit about his bio, and we will dive right in. Aaron Siri is the managing partner of Siri Glimstad LLP and has extensive experience in a wide range of complex civil litigation matters with a focus on civic rights, class actions, and commercial litigation. Mr. Siri, he has already given me permission to call him Aaron. That feels very informal, but I will call him Aaron. Has successfully litigated numerous civil rights cases involving informed consent and parental rights with regard to mandated medical products, including representing whistleblowers, successfully challenging vaccine mandates, and false information being spread by health agencies. Aaron's legal accomplishments are historic, and no one has done a better job of forcing our regulatory health agencies to admit to shortcomings in the vaccine program. It's an honor to have you on as a guest today. Thank you for taking the time, Aaron.
Thank you, Rebecca. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I alluded to your many legal victories in my intro, but today I want to start with highlighting the newest study titled Funding Post-Authorization Vaccine Safety Study, which appeared in the July 6th, 2024 issue of the New England Medical Journal and was co-authored by Stanley Plotkin. So before we dive into that study, can you give our audience, maybe some new to the movement listeners, some context and history on who Plotkin is in relation to the vaccine program?
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Stanley Plotkin is in many ways, he is the godfather of vaccinology. He is either directly invented or been part of the invention of at least 6 of the vaccines that are currently on the schedule, including the rubella vaccine, including pioneering the use of abortifetal tissue to develop the rubella vaccine. He's also the author, the editor of the medical textbooks on vaccines called literally Plotkin's Vaccines. It's a tome. We refer to it all the time. If you go down to the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee and you look at the gavel that they hit with, it's literally called Plotkin's Gavel. There is nobody that's had more of an influence on every single aspect of the vaccine program, not only in the United States, but internationally. And there's a great interview with Dr. Paul Offit, which I'm assuming many of your listeners know and maybe and love in special ways. Paul Offit will tell you, Dr. Paul Offit will tell you, he has publicly said that Stanley Plotkin was his mentor and that he shaped a generation of vaccinologists to think the way Dr. Plotkin thinks. So if you, when you see how Dr. Offit operates, in many ways, his teacher was Dr. Stanley Plotkin, and all the other vaccinologists you see out there in the landscape, they've all been shaped by Plotkin. He's also attended the Vaccine Advisory Committee for forever. He's one of the few people who's able to get up and speak. Long story short, yes, he has been at the spear tip. I would also add one other thing is that I deposed him in 2018. And in that deposition, I had an opportunity to go through vaccine safety in a way I don't think he's ever been questioned before, because these folks live in this insulated bubble. I got to, for example, go over with him and say, hey, you say these things are properly tested before licensure. Why don't we take a look at the clinical trials relied upon to license it, right? And we went through a number, many of the vaccines, including how long was safety reviewed. When you watch the deposition, you almost see he's surprised. Wait, it says 5 days of monitoring for the Hep B vaccine? Because I don't think they really look at safety. They look at efficacy. They don't really care about safety, from what I could tell when they do that work. So clinical trials, we talked about post-license safety, a whole host of issues. And after that deposition, because we have over 2,000 FOIA requests, all on behalf of ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network, which I'm sure you know, and we filed, I think, 21 lawsuits against the FDA and NIH and so forth, just for FOIA requests last month. we have all the internal emails, and you could see that Dr. Plotkin goes on a rampage after that deposition, seeking to have them. He wants them to amend the package inserts to get rid of harms listed. He demands that they update the vaccine information sheets. For example, for the MMR, it used to say brain damage. If you looked at the vaccine information sheet, it used to say that MMR can cause brain damage. CDC's own words. Dr. Plotkin had that removed, right? We have all these internal images. You could see he goes worldwide. Remember when the World Health Organization came out and said vaccine hesitancy is one of the world's? I think he was probably the one who drove that. Sorry, unintended consequence.
It's okay.
So you have he goes around, and I think that what you see. So that's the backdrop. And this article that you just referenced, I think that Dr. Plotkin and his minions have finally, I think, realized it's not going to work. It's not going to work because and by the way, a lot of the initial censorship, which happened pre-COVID, I believe he drove that as well on social media platforms. That said, I think they realized that it's not going to work. You now have a larger proportion than ever. COVID certainly helped, and them trying to do this publicly, really publicly helped. Understanding that this approach of censoring, bullying, gaslighting is just not going to work. Calling people names, calling them dangerous, right? Using adjectives instead of substance. People aren't stupid. And at the end of the day, you can only use those methods to so far. And in fact, if anything, it helped wake up large segments of the population who go, wait a second. Okay. So they're dangerous and they're crazy, but they've got a point, and I don't hear you responding to it. And those points we just kept making, all of us collectively. Rebecca, your group, thank you so much for the work you do. It's so important. Every state group, it's really important. I mean, the fight for right happens at the state level, and the state groups that do good, effective work, so critically important. I can't say enough. Some of the work that we do to bring out information, would be in some ways, it needs somebody to then use those as tools, and you folks do that really well. With that said, they've realized that they're not going to be able to, I don't think, turn the tide by continuing to engage in that approach, including because, just in the last, for example, and I'm just one person, just me. I just testified before Congress 2 weeks ago, a bunch of state legislative houses, and I don't just get to talk about COVID vaccine. I'm talking about childhood vaccines and all the trials, all the schedule. And they know they're watching that because they have sometimes their expert there, and and they see the tide. They're not going to hide this stuff anymore. And I'll leave it at this, and I'll stop. All those efforts to amend the package insert to include more safety information and the VIS to get rid of stuff. Are the package inserts amended to include more safety information? No, because there isn't any. They can't. Even the FDA won't just make stuff up, at least not in that way, with regards to that. So, it was a nice attempt, but they don't have the meat, they don't have the substance. And so this article that you just referenced is effectively, in my view, a capitulation. They have finally just said, okay, we're going to stop saying vaccines are the best safety tested product ever. We're going to admit clinical trials don't assess safety. That's what the article admits. Our post-licensure safety, oh yeah, we don't really allocate money to it. Well, there's general money for it, but we don't directly allocate money for it, so we're not really doing. And you know what we need? We need to raid the funds set aside for vaccine injured folks, the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, meaning give us the vaccine injured money so we can now do studies on safety. That's the study just referenced. That was a very long answer to your question, but I think I might have gotten many of the pieces of it.
You did great. You actually answered my first 2 or 3 questions, so well done. And I want to just reference that 2018 deposition. I mean, all of us on staff have watched it. I mean, it's quite long, but the meat and potatoes of it, it is shocking. Just how I agree with you. Even he seemed surprised at the lack of safety testing. And what struck me the most that has just stayed with me is just his flippant disregard of the use of the aborted fetal cells, of the testing on orphans and our most vulnerable citizens in this nation. It's just wicked, Aaron. There's no other word for it.
Well, it just, for what it's worth, right? And I think this is true of all the, those at the CDC, FDA who engage in this work. They believe, I have to believe this, and I think they do. They believe that on balance, they're doing more good than harm. And so in the drive to do that, they justify aborting. They can justify all of the harms along the way. The problem is that they don't just stop even with their own personal justifications, their own persona, their own self-worth, their life achievements all get wrapped in to these products. And because unfortunately they have the tools of government, then they engage in more and more and more destructive conduct, crushing civil rights, individual liberties, free speech, in order to maintain this view that they have that they're doing more good than bad. So, it's not like I don't think he wakes up and goes, I'm evil. I think he wakes up and thinks, I'm saving the world. So yeah, I hurt this many people, but I saved that many people. That's playing God. That's not his judgment call to make. And the FDA and CDC forget that every single day when they go to work, I'm sure, most of the folks there.
That's right. So some of the concerns that I've heard about this type of research referenced in the new Plotkin study is that it's only going to more fully hide the reality that the safety surveillance and data is wholly inadequate. You alluded to this a little bit, but can you dive a little bit deeper into your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. So when I read the article, of course, it's great that they make these admissions regarding the lack of safety pre-licensure, post-licensure. But I wrote the article that I wrote, and I posted a copy of it on my Twitter account and my Substack, and because I wanted to immediately, just before some news cycle started around it, just make very clear that this really isn't about safety. It's not. It's about them getting the studies that they can engineer, in my view, to then say it is safe. How do I know that? It's pregnant in the article itself. The article starts by saying, we got to do this, we got to study it, but it says, because, vaccine injuries are rare. So the article already has reached a conclusion that they're rare. We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the post-safety. But one thing we know it's rare. That we know. But how do you know that? Because the truth is they don't care. It's not about really doing objective vaccine safety science. It's about needing hundreds of millions of dollars, apparently, because it's hard to engineer studies to get it to say exactly what you want, apparently. It's a joke. I actually, as I wrote in my article, I said I would reach out to them, and I did. I emailed all of them, and I said, if you're really interested in this, we don't need to raise any fund. This is easy. Let's just put a panel together. You pick half, we pick half, we just have a majority. Because the data to do these studies is out there. It exists. It's sitting in big, large data sets. The small studies that have been done, Mawson and others, show damning results between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. The CDC itself paid for a white paper on how to conduct a study comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated children using existing data, including in the vaccine safety data link. On that, one of the authors on that white paper was Stanley Plotkin, by the way, one of the reviewers, I should say. I think it's been 10 years since they published that, something like that, close, or it's going to be nearing on a decade. Query this, ask yourself this, Rebecca. Do you think they haven't done the study, or do you think they haven't published the study?
My money's on publishing. I think they've done it, and the results are horrifying.
Well, we don't need to speculate, right?
Yeah. No, we're not in that business.
You did a whole thing because I said you could do it. You want to put a nail in the coffin in this whole issue? You want to get folks who are out there saying, oh, vaccines have this or that potential issue, or put a nail in the coffin of all the studies, smaller, that show that it is harmful? Do that study, publish it.
Right. Where's the harm? If they're always safe and always effective, just do the study. That's what I say all the time when I travel this state.
Publish.
That's right. Publish the study. That is exactly right.
Simple approach of just comparing the thousands of the completely unvaccinated kids in the vaccine data link. Data they have. Data they literally have right now with all the kids that got one or more vaccine. Just compare their ICD-910 codes, those are the billing codes for asthma, for neurological issues, for cardiovascular issues, whatever it might be. Simple comparison. You could do that in an afternoon. Just compare. Okay, we have the 5,000 kids. Just compare the outcomes. What does it look like? What is the differential between those? I would be shocked they haven't. And in fact, I was involved in a study that did that. I wasn't involved personally. I'm aware of a study that was done at a major institution of exactly that. But when the results came back, the authors would not publish the results. And I happened to have the ability to see the draft, but the university would not let it get published. And I could tell you that in that study, which was done by folks who are totally pro-vaccine, so to speak, and which is why it didn't get published, the risk of those who are vaccinated was numerous times across numerous categories of harms, most of which are immune or immune mediated or neurological issues, a very type of harms you often see from vaccines. Anyway, I digress.
Oh, digress all you want, Aaron. Here's my next question. What do you see happening to the vaccine program as the fraud and the dangers continue to be exposed? I mean, your work is incredible, and I love what you said earlier about how all of us are kind of rowing our oars towards the same direction, just in a different, arena, if you will, but it's all kind of towards the same goal of just bringing down the fraud or highlighting it. I mean, what do you see happening? If you had, Look, reading the tea leaves.
I think there's critical mass in every issue in society, right? Where, human beings have this thing where we look at the world as permanent, like things can never change. And, just to use the example of gay marriage, in the 1800s, you told somebody that would be a constitutional right. They would laugh at you in 1910, 1920, 1930, 1940, because the world seems so permanent in every moment in time. That's just a human condition. It's hard to imagine things change. And as soon as they change, a day later, they're like, oh yeah, that's the way it is. And so on this issue, it might feel sometimes like, especially 8 years ago, 7, 9 years ago, when we were doing the same fight we're doing now, 7 years ago, it may seem like nothing can change, but you just got to keep at it. And eventually, and then when you look at the landscape right now, how do you get change in the legislative houses? How do you get change in the courts? Right? Which is what you're saying. Like, how do we address this bigger issue around these products? Which, by the way, in my view, is at the end of the day, how come we're not talking right now about heart medicine? How come we're not talking about any other drug on the market? Because nobody tries to make you get it. Nobody tries to kick your kids out of school. Nobody tries to exclude you from work for it. It's the government crushing of your civil and digital rights, in my opinion. That's the problem. I mean, there's obviously a problem when a drug harms people. That's bad. But if you can avoid it, if you can, not have the agencies, try to hide the harm. With that said, I think that cultural cognition is shifting. In our lawsuits, when we sued, for example, members of the Air Force, and this is an example I often give, we went up to the Sixth Circuit, over 20 attorney generals filed an amicus brief in support of our position that the airmen should be able to say no to COVID-19 vaccines. And we won that injunction. They were going to kick out over 10,000 members of the Air Force, and the court gave a class-wide injunction and stopped it. And these over 20 attorney generals came in and agreed. Attorney generals have also filed amicus briefs, means briefs in support of our position in other cases. We have one right now with over 20 attorney generals filed an amicus brief, and that's a huge shift. You told me 7 years ago 20 attorney generals will file in a case that we brought to support our position, contrary to the dogma on vaccines. I wouldn't have believed you. We have over 20 states that either have laws now, moving away from the AGs, laws or executive orders that limit the ability for government in those states to require masks or COVID vaccines. That's a ground shift in and of itself. So obviously the cultural cognition around this issue is really changing nationally. Now, not in every state, and currently only one side of the political spectrum, but that's one side versus no sides, I would say. 5 years ago, it's moving in a massive way in the right direction.
I agree. The momentum, or the headwinds are on our side, and we're charging ahead over here in Texans for Vaccine Choice land. We are not resting on our laurels. There's so much work to do, and we are charging ahead.
Well, I'll make one point on that, and that's what I said before. I meant what I said, which is, Texans for Vaccine Choice, as I understand it, you guys go down, you make relationships with your legislative representatives, you have their constituents go out and meet with them, you educate them about this issue. It is critically important. It is so important. If every state did what you folks do in Texas, that would have a massive impact, right? I mean, all of these pieces coming together. So, in any event, please.
Well, thank you. What do you think the three-letter health agencies will survive this time intact, or do you see a massive reckoning coming?
Intact. I think that they work for us. They work for us. America is not the government. America is its people.
Amen.
Okay, and so to the extent they survive, I don't know. They need to be reformed, gutted from the inside out, to root out everybody in those agencies who think in any way that they need to get their way by anything other than persuasion. You want to try to persuade on the merits? Go for it. But when you can't persuade, that is the end of the discussion. They don't get that. They all think you should engage in mandates, censorship, bullying. I mean, that is exactly why this country was founded against. It was against the oppression that was occurring from England. It was against a rebellion against every form of government that preceded this country, which was the idea that some central authority knew better than you, as a king, a dictator, or whatever. And so we said, no. We have inalienable rights, right? You, the government, have limited rights. We have all the rights. You only have the rights we give you. You have limited powers. And instead, and so you can try to persuade us, but if we don't agree, you don't get to just take away our jobs, throw us out of school, lock us out of civil society. The only reason they have to engage in these mandates and these bullying and all of these thuggery practices is because they can't persuade us on the merits. Because they take a vaccine with 5 days of safety monitoring and 147 children, license it, and then want to mandate us to get it. It's ridiculous, right?
It is.
It is ridiculous. And people understand it, go, no way, I'm not doing that. Oh, wait. And it's so safe, I can't even sue the manufacturer for injury. Whoa. Wait a second, buddy. I can think. If you got to give the company that makes it immunity, maybe there's a problem there. If the company won't even stand behind the product, should I really be injecting that children? Those are reasonable ideas. Those are reasonable reactions. And they want to basically beat you if you don't nonetheless agree. All those folks need to be rooted out of those agencies. The time will come. It will happen.
Wonderful. I'm just sitting here getting inspired. We're going to church today, Aaron.
Okay.
Thank you.
The only thing is that you just never give up. When you're right, just don't
Amen.
give up. You just got to keep pushing at it. So even no matter how impossible it seems, you just got to keep pushing at it. I will tell you right now, today in America, this moment, if every single person who understands the substance knowledge, and by the way, it's the folks who have issues with vaccines that, from my experience, they know about these products. It's the folks who ought to come and tell you everyone's going to die. They don't know jack crap, including mostly all the pediatricians I depose. I mean, God bless them. I'm assuming they're nice people. They seem really nice when I depose them, but they don't know anything about the products. They've spent their lifetime injecting into children. But if everybody who understood about these products, the reality around them, stood up, wasn't shy about it, and said, call me whatever you want, call me an anti-vaxxer, whatever, this thing would be over very quickly. If these rallies of every mom and dad came every time there was a rally about this, when their children are on the line, this thing would change a lot quicker. Unfortunately, and I get it, a lot of folks, they get fake vaccine cards. They don't want to tell anybody. They keep it quiet, keep it secret. Fortunately, that's changing. And if every person in that situation just said, I don't care, call me what you want. My substantive information if your pejorative response just reflects that I'm right. So when you call me a name, if that's all you got, that's all you have, thank you. Just affirm to me that I'm right. Right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that's what's great about organizations like Texans for Vaccine Choice. It allows people to kind of come out of the shadows and not feel like they are a lone voice in the wind. We do have a lot of numbers, and that speaks really loudly at the Capitol. And just one metric that I think you spoke to in just a second, we are seeing the dads finally. This has been such a mom-driven movement for so long. But the tide is shifting there. We see the dads showing up, and it is incredible because we need them. We need both the mom and the dad. Those voices are unfortunately not unfortunately they are stronger at the Capitol. It's unfortunate that we get dismissed as just stupid moms a lot, but I'll take the reinforcements. Here's my next question. In my opinion, the work done by your firm has revolutionized the medical liberty movement. What originally drew you to focus on the vaccine program?
Oh, well, I guess I should just start the answer by saying there are over 40 folks at this firm at our firm that do vaccine work. We do everything vaccine related. So, a lot of things we are talking about, it's not just me. I couldn't do all the suits, striking down COVID vaccine mandates in Cali and the Army and the Air Force and getting the Pfizer documents and, all the suits, restoring the religious exemption. 21 suits I talk about. I do have a very significant team. They're amazing. And most of that policy work is supported by ICANN. So that's the work, so to speak. So it's not just me, and, in terms of the importance of this issue, there really isn't a law firm out there that has as far as I'm aware, we have the largest vaccine practice in the world that doesn't represent pharmaceutical companies. I'll tell you a story. A quick story. So when there was some measles cases in New York back in pre-COVID, and there were thousands.
2019, I think it was.
Of cases, but and nobody died, by the way. They were starting to actually mandate the MMR vaccine if you lived in certain zip codes in Brooklyn. So the only way you could get and they started excluding kids from school, and the only way you could get your kids in school was to actually have measles. So they left these folks, often folks who had convictions, religious beliefs, deeply held convictions about abortion and other things, that would not use this product. The only option they had to get their kids back into school was for them to have the measles. And so there were these measles parties all over the place. I mean, New York City reports thousands, it's probably far more than that. That said, I don't think New York City Department of Health liked that. And so, just like we were talking about earlier, what did they engage in? Did they try to persuade? No. They just engaged in thuggery. They literally made it illegal to exist in any of the zip codes without an MR vaccine. Literally. It was illegal to just remain as God created them. You have an apartment in any of the zip codes, that's where you live, you better either run, or they were literally knocking on your door. They were hunting people down, and they were giving them violations. And they would do it in a way to try to publicly shame them too. They would leave it on their doors. They would barge into their buildings. ICANN agreed to support us challenging every single lawsuit. Every single violation. So we did. We represented hundreds of these folks. And we got almost all of them dismissed on technicalities typically beforehand. There was 30 left of these hundreds of violations. You can't serve it on Saturday. You can't do this, right? So we got almost all of them dismissed. So we go into this hearing, and we've only got a few dozen left. And I'm in the hallway, and the head of the New York City Department of Health, the general counsel, the head attorney, after we're doing this hearing, and I'm going through with their expert, I'm so this product, and by the way, I had a vial of MMR in there, And I'm like, do you look at this powder? Do you know that it has live mRNA, blah, blah, and I'm like, put it on the table. Like, you can see, like, they're fine with injecting this, but man, were they uncomfortable with like just a vial sitting on their desk with a needle, so I've got it sitting there and I'm like, anyhow, and I'm going through the product and all the data. They don't know anything about these products. So in the hallway, very nice guy, very nice guy. I mean, genuinely a nice guy. He's just an attorney. He was the head attorney of New York City Health Department, one of the biggest health departments in the country, and bigger than most state health departments. And at that point, this is like at least 6-7 years. I wasn't as prolific, so to speak, in terms of this work. And if you had looked at my resume then, it was I went to Berkeley. I clerked with the chief judge of the Supreme Court of Israel for a year. I worked at one of the biggest firms representing Fortune 100 companies in multi-billion disputes. Then my own firm, I was still kind of doing commercial lit, large commercial lit cases. Some of them, hundreds of $1 million public traded companies. And he's like, "Why are you doing this? Like, what are you doing here? Why are you doing this?" And I said to him, here's what I said to him. This is my answer. That's a long wind up. But I said, "Hey, let me tell you something. I want you to think of a minority group in America. Think of any racial group. Think of any religious minority group, any ethnic group. Just picture it, whatever, black, whatever you want. Just picture it. Now imagine you turn on your TV and you could hear the anchors say the most despicable things about them. That they should have their children taken away from them. They should be kicked out of school, not allowed to have jobs. Think about that. I want you to imagine that as a minority group. Think about it. You'd be horrified. How could you talk about people like this? How could you say they don't have a right to even be parents? Over what? Over what determination? You would be horrified if it was any other group. But for some reason, when it comes to folks who make this decision, this medical decision, and they don't make it lightly, I said to him, who wakes up and says, "Oh, you know what I want to do today? I want to take a socially ostracizing position that might get my kids kicked out of school, me thrown out of work, me called an anti-science quack, an anti-this, an anti-that, disparaged, kicked out of my, especially in places like New York City, kicked out of my social circles. Yeah, that's what I want to do today for fun." Nobody does that. I said,
No.
People who reach this decision come to it often because something really powerful, either they had an experience with themselves, with their children, they've learned stuff they cannot unlearn. I said, these are the last folks that should be attacked, and especially for the ones who've got a vaccine-injured child. You want to talk about adding insult to injury? I said, in my opinion, respectfully, if there's any group that you should be fighting for, whose civil rights need protecting, it's this group. Because they're probably one of the last minorities in this country. And what are they? What are they? They're a group of humans who want to be as God made them. That's what they want. They don't even care what you do. They're not the ones who are saying, don't do it. They're saying, leave us alone. They're trying to force anything on you. You're trying to force it on them. Look at this hearing. They're the ones. It's funny because they're the ones you always say, oh, they're the ones who are crazy. No, you're the ones who are crazy. Leave them alone.
That's right.
They just want to be left alone. You are forcing folks like me to fight against you. But that's not me bringing the fight. You're forcing me to bring the fight. That's because you won't stop. You leave them alone, I go away.
That's right.
Leave
There's
them
only
alone, I
one
go
side
away.
there's only one side of
That's
this
it.
equation that's trying to force the other side.
But I mean that.
We just want to be left alone.
Just want to be left right. You want to get a vaccine. You want to get a vaccine every single day. Wear 16 masks and do a stay-at-home, live in your basement forever. That's freedom. That's America. You should be able to do it. But the 80-year-old who wants to just enjoy life, doesn't want to wear a mask, get any vaccine, he should be able to do that too.
That's
crush
right.
his rights. It's crazy. And so in any event, so that might answer your question about the importance of this work and why I do really view it as the civil rights issue of our time in a way, because if there's a product you don't want and you refuse to get it and you can't go to school and you can't go to work and you can't go to church and what are the good of the other rights? What good is the right of freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of religion when you can't exercise any of them except for alone staring at a wall in your house, right? Obviously, it's a critical issue, and it's one that's going to get more and more press because your body, your children's body, they're the commodity on which pharma needs to make their profit. This is not a conspiracy. It's just good business, and they're good at doing business and good at making money. And that is the press you see in terms of chipping away your civil and individual rights. But again, I don't want to sound down on it. I'm incredibly hopeful. I think the tide in this is the momentum is massive in our direction, as seen to end where we started in a way. That article where they've just fully capitulated on the safety component and now just want to raid money to come up with some bullcrap science, which we got to fight them relentlessly. And I'm not done addressing that article or those folks in terms of this because there's no way they're going to be. We can let them get away with that.
No, sir. All right. So what's on the horizon for the Siri law firm? What other suits should we be looking for?
Well, one of the suits that we actually have going on in Texas right now is we are challenging the PrEP Act community for those who are injured by COVID vaccine, as well as the program set up to compensate them. It's called the Counter Injury Compensation Program, the CICP. The CICP, I believe it was a reporter from a major newspaper called me up, national paper, and called me up to get a quote about our suit. And I told her, look, I don't know, this might be a long quote, but here's how I would describe the CICP. Go fill out a piece of paper, go to your backyard, dig a hole, put it in the ground, water it, make sure it gets sun, and just wait for it to grow compensation. That's what the CICP is. It's the most procedurally defunct, due process violative proceeding you've ever had. The government is offering you. So if you get a zoning variance, if you want, even like hearings, if they deny you Social Security, it has to have certain procedures. Like who's deciding your claim in the CICP? You don't know. What do you have to submit exactly? You don't know. What facts are they deciding upon? You don't know. Can you confront their witnesses? No. Do you even know who they are? No. Who's their expert? Don't know. Can you confront them? No. Can you have a hearing? No. It is a black hole. It is the most offensive program I can imagine ever when it comes to constitutional guarantee to due process. And so that thing is, in my view, without any question, unconstitutional. We are, people contact us and we're bringing claims. Anybody who's, injured by a COVID vaccine filed in the CICP, ICANN is supporting those claims. And so we're bringing suits. And so, folks affected by this contact us, and we're very happy to bring those lawsuits.
Well, wonderful. Well, you've been so generous with your time today, Aaron. Do you have any just final thoughts or final words of encouragement for our listeners?
Recognize, support Texans for Vaccine Choice. Great organization, fighting the good fight in Texas. And when they put a message out and say to you, hey, please contact your local rep, do it. You may seem like, well, I'm just one person. What can it matter? Your state representatives, I assure you, you would think like, oh, they're an elected House and Senate official. You would be surprised at how few people ever go to see them, that they're constituents. When some constituent that lives in their district finally shows up, they're like, oh, come on in. They're not being hounded like that. Their constituents don't come to their door. You would be amazed if 3 folks from their district, that's like a freaking party, in my experience, depending on the state. So when Texas Vaccine Choice puts out the word, it says, go meet with your local official about this bill or that bill. It is so important that you do. If everybody in Texas did that and walked into their office, if they got 20 people from their district come in, wow. I mean, that would be it. They know there are 20 people motivated, even 10, even 8, even 5, motivated enough to pick up a phone, to walk down to their office. They know, wow, if they're willing to do that, what are they going to do to me on social media? What are they going to do to me in their circles? They're going to put me on blast if I don't support them. And they only need a few people to just create a whole mess for them in terms of circles. So really, I mean, if 3 people walk in and that's all there is, and they're like, yeah, I got Facebook, I got this, whatever. That alone would make them think twice. If they got 3 coming in saying support this bill, and they got 0 coming in to say oppose this bill, and so it really, those numbers are real in many places. Those are real numbers. We work with state representatives around the country in various states. Those numbers, I can tell you, do have an impact. So I know it's very specific, but it's, for the folks watching here in Texas, that really is something that you can do. And then, when you walk in, I haven't visited recently the Texas Vaccine Choice website. There might be some great information there that you could share, and definitely do that. But also, it could also take a look at the ICANN website, the Get Informed section. There is a 2-pager. We got a 2-pager. We got a 8-pager. We got a 20-pager. So whatever you think they'll read, you could come with the 2-pager, the 8, the 20, and you could provide it to them, just to get a basic education. You can also use it to get some of the points. Everything in there, I personally vetted, so I'm pretty sure it's 100% accurate. All cited to federal sources, typically the stuff that they would normally rely upon. So do that, and then that would be the primary thing to do. Just keep working with your elected representatives, support groups like Texans for Vaccine Choice, and never be afraid, never shy down on this issue. Speak up. Tell everybody you know about it. Don't be annoying, but don't shy away from it. I think stand in the integrity of what you believe. Right, have the courage of your convictions. If this is something you believe in, especially if it's affecting you or children, and you'll see in the context even of the most hostile discussion, people rarely in that engagement say, "Oh, you're right." No, that doesn't happen. You have a battle. You stay calm, you stay cool, you teach, you explain, you show that you think you haven't moved them. But I promise you, if you substantively got them, the next time, unless they're just complete zealots, like folks who wrote this article, the next time that they think about this issue, they come about it, they'll think about that because they'll be calm, won't be emotional. It will have an impact. So, don't think that it's not going to change anybody's mind. Oh, you'll be amazed. It does. It just doesn't happen in that same engagement. It happens after they're sleeping the next day. So moms and dads, and moms are, critically important, and dads. I view them as equally important. I just think that 1 + 1 makes 2. So if you just have both, that's just more. And so anyway, that would be my general advice. And obviously, feel free to, folks can also go to our firm website, SiriLLP.com. We also, if they want to take a look at we do have some free resources there on getting exemptions, whether it's for in all different areas, as well as kind of the suits that we bring to, we have a, COVID vaccine injury page as well, and so forth. So that's another resource if folks are interested.
Well, wonderful. Well, let me, on behalf of hundreds of thousands of Texans that TFVC represents, I just want to extend our heartfelt gratitude for your relentlessness on this issue and just your dedication to bringing light in such a just pivotal and true needle-moving way. Your efforts are seen and so appreciated by so many. So keep being a hero to us, and thank you for your time today.
No, thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.